Hello and welcome to GreenBytes Wednesdays. GreenBytes Wednesdays is a podcast series where we facilitate critical conversations and steer consciousness when it comes to understanding the impact of our digital footprint across Nigeria's technology ecosystem. We hope that with this advanced knowledge, we can introduce you to some tools, trends, and best practices that can enhance your knowledge about digital sustainability. Are you curious about climate change? Are you a tech enthusiast or a climate entrepreneur? Come on board and learn on this episode as we get on with every conversation of the GreenBytes Wednesday podcast series. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, funded by the UK government through the Digital Access Program. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote, and I am glad to be your host. Welcome on board. When I read that every hour, 68,733 phones are being produced, I almost went crazy. Like, really? But that was not as shocking as when I read that 13 million phones are being thrown away every day. Multiply that by 365 days. My rough mathematics says over 5 billion phones being thrown away every year in a world where we're just, 8.2 million people. And what this tells you is that electronic waste is a huge problem. Some people have described Nigeria as a dumping ground for electronic waste, especially this waste that comes from developed countries, where they have, new episodes or new technology, new editions, improved systems, just to see that they can push away the old ones. And what this means literally is a lot and lots of e-waste in places like Nigeria. And this brings us to the question, beyond recycling, what exactly can we do about the problem of electronic waste in Nigeria? The Global E-Waste Monitor describes that Nigeria is about the fourth, when you look at the rating, the fourth highest country that is battling with electronic waste. We're only second, or we're after South Africa and Egypt on the continent. Quite disturbing. And that's why we're having this conversation today around e-waste in Nigeria. Beyond recycling. It's easy to say, hey, let's recycle. But beyond recycling, are there stricter regulations that can make it possible for us to, in the first place, avoid e-waste, and going further to see that e-waste is done or is managed properly? My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of GreenBytes Wednesday. If you join in for the first time, GreenBytes Wednesday is a podcast series where we facilitate critical conversations. And for us, the aim of these conversations is to see that we can steer reflective consciousness within you who is listening. And that we can also introduce you to digital landscape in Nigeria, such that you can understand, what your digital footprint is, what are some tools or trends that is making it, or that is changing digital sustainability, not just in Africa, but we're narrowing it here in Nigeria. And GreenBytes Wednesday is a part of the Scale for Net Zero program. Scale is the Smart Climate Awareness, Learning and Empowerment program. It is funded by the UK government, and we're very excited to bring you this series of episodes just to beef up your knowledge and steer you to take action when it comes to the intersections between energy, digitalization, and sustainability. Welcome once again. My guest today is Ibukun Faluyi. I don't know if I pronounced that. Faluyi, right?
Yeah, Faluyi.
Absolutely. Ibukun Faluyi is my guest today. She is a sustainability specialist with special emphasis on environment and resource management. For the last 20 years, her work experience, spans across social and private sector, where she's helped different organizations to drive or enhance their competitiveness and improve their environmental performance. Currently, she serves as the executive secretary of the E-Waste Producers Responsibility Organization of Nigeria. which is a platform that has been set up to implement the extended producer's responsibility. If you listen to previous episodes, you will see that we've spoken a lot around the EPR, and it's really incredible to see that EPRON has narrowed into the e-waste sector and see how we can get the EPR really functional in the electrical and electronic sector in Nigeria. So it's such a privilege to have, I would say, the perfect person on this episode of GreenBytes Wednesday as we discuss beyond recycling. What are the stricter regulations? What are the other alternatives to see that e-waste is properly managed in Nigeria? Welcome once again. Just before we get into the conversation, I want to say don't be selfish. Share this with people in your network. Also find the podcast on everywhere you find podcasts, from YouTube to Spotify to Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud. You can definitely find the series of GreenBytes Wednesday thereon. Ibukun, welcome to the conversation. Very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Seyi. It's nice to be here with you today.
Great. So, it is our pleasure indeed to have you. And I must say, we struggled a lot to find the perfect person. So we are really excited that you made out the time and that we can make this work despite the logistical challenge. But yes, moving on. From where you sit, Ibukun, you are the Executive Secretary of EPRON, which is the leading organization when it comes to e-waste in Nigeria. Give us an outlook of what e-waste is in Nigeria today.
Well, your introduction says it all. Lots of e-waste is being generated on a daily basis. A study we did in 2023 shows that, within a year, people get to use up to like 3 or 4 items that becomes obsolete or bad, and that becomes electronic waste when it comes to devices. So the generation is high. The management is also still largely in the hands of the informal sector, with very little being done by the formal recyclers that we have out there. So it's just as you said, it's not so different from what you said.
Great, thank you. And yeah, in the introduction, I talked, just about phones. But when we talk about e-waste, we're not just talking about phones. We're talking about, cords, cables. We're talking about cameras like the ones we're using to shoot, microphones, earbuds. We have a lot of that all over the place. So just think of it as broad as you can think. Anything that is electronic, after usage, it becomes a waste. And so let's sort of narrow it down a little bit. What are some of the very common e-waste that you see? Let's say away from phones and laptops, which are like the major ones. What are some very prominent e-waste that you see?
So I think the best way to just say it is to define what you will call e-waste. Anything that has a circuit or anything that has a battery, it will eventually become electronic waste when it's no longer functional. So if you look at from your medical devices, your Sphig for your high blood pressure monitor, cameras like you've mentioned, AirPods, bulbs in your houses, it's diverse, solar lamps, solar panels, it's scanners in the airports and maybe hospitals. There's so much. It's just a wide range of things. The list is almost endless,
Absolutely. And I was reading a study that says that around 80% of processed e-waste still has the potential to be reused or refurbished. And this goes on to tell us about, maybe it tells us about infrastructure, maybe it tells us about consumers' attitude, probably it also tells us about the skill set of people to refurbish or to repurpose some of these things. But let's now sort of get on with the conversation. I wonder, what would you say are the primary challenges that is being faced when we think about e-waste recycling or, managing e-waste in Nigeria? You talked about how most of them are in the informal sector, but beyond that, what would you say are the key challenges that we experience today in managing e-waste in Nigeria?
So one of it is what you've mentioned about a lot of it being in the hands of the informal sector. So when it comes to the formal, they do not have access to a lot of this e-waste. And then if you look at the system that we're supposed to have in place for the collection and management, it's not in place. So that's also a very major challenge. You don't have collection centers where you can take your electronic waste to. And in terms of the knowledge itself also of people recognizing that this is electronic waste and it should be treated specially is also not as prolific as it should be. A lot of people do not know that these things are electronic waste and should be managed in a specialized manner. So it makes the access reduced, so to speak. Then there's the informal sector that are a major problem, because this informal sector take this e-waste away from people at a higher amount. So people are more inclined to give it up to them and say, okay, you manage, you take it and give me something in return, regardless of the process that this informal people will take it through, you know. So we have those kind of challenges that is really stopping effective collection and management of e-waste in an environmentally sound manner. And the thing is that okay.
Yes, go on, please.
Okay, so the thing is that, say, do we have appropriate regulations that is managing this, that defines how this should work? Yes, we do. But the level of enforcement of this regulation is quite low, so all things can happen the way we are finding it.
Yeah, and that brings us to the marrow of the conversation, which is around strict regulation. So, and like you said, we have some regulations, right? Can you walk us through some of these regulations? And then we can move on to talk about, you know, how strict they are or how efficient they are or otherwise.
Okay, so when it comes to electrical electronic equipment, we have the National Environmental Electrical Electronic Equipment Regulations 2022. It's a revised version of the 2011 version of that same regulation. And it kind of focuses on the life cycle of electrical and electronic equipment, not just e-waste alone. So it talks about, you know, the process you should have in assembling e-waste or manufacturing e-waste in Nigeria, how you should use it, how you should treat it after you're done using it if you no longer want it, and then more importantly, how it should be managed at the end of life. It also goes a long way to define the responsibilities of everybody. We also have the guidance document that is for the implementation of extended producer responsibility according to circular economy principles. That's for 2020. So we do have we do have the regulation in place, but the implementation of this regulation is what needs to be improved in terms of what is demanded of all the value chain members that have been given specific responsibilities or roles in developing these regulations and the guidance documents.
If you had to advise the government, how exactly would you, push them or nudge them towards getting it right with the regulations?
So, for me, it's just looking at the way the regulation was developed and the way it addresses the value chain, and then you just work with that. Producers comply with the extended producer responsibility program compulsorily. Then in terms of the collectors, abide by the collection arrangements, ensure you have the kind of facilities that is required for collection. Recyclers should, recycle according to the standard. We have a national standard that was developed for e-waste management in the country. So recyclers should abide by that standard. Anybody else that is not able to abide by the requirements of these regulations and the existing standard, then should be sanctioned appropriately as defined also in the regulation. So it's about just stepping up the game to implement or enforce the provisions of these legal instruments that we have on ground.
Absolutely. Maybe we can connect this a little bit with your academic background. I understand you have a master's in chemical risk management, rather. Let's talk about the chemical components. I understand. Walk us through it. Some of the chemical risk that are at play when we are engaged with electronic waste, or when electronic are being disposed improperly? What are some of the chemical repercussions that we are at risk of?
So we are at risk of releasing a lot of toxic and harmful chemicals into the environment, and this eventually goes to our body. We are all aware that inside electronic waste, we have things like mercury, we have lead, we have brominated flame retardants, we have a host of them. And for each of these chemicals, they were not designed for it to be in the environment and also in the human body. It was designed to serve some purpose. So when you now indiscriminately manage electronic waste, you release these chemicals into the environment in the wrong ways. For instance, if you're burning, you release dioxins and furans into the environment. People inhale this. And we hear a lot of things about cancer these days, which wasn't the case in the past. So these are some of the outcomes that has been proven and associated with all these release of hazardous substances. The lead, we all know about how dangerous lead is. We have a classic case of lead poisoning in Zamfara some years back in Nigeria, so there's no need for me to say so much about that. The POPs, that's the flame retardants. These are persistent organic pollutants that when they are released into the environment, they travel far and wide. You cannot hold them down. They can't be contained. They just move across places. And then they go and deposit themselves in the fatty tissues of people, especially people that have, a lot of fatty tissues in their body. What is the outcome? Endocrine depleting, ability. So you see fertility cases in women, children having cognitive issues, a host of challenges that is associated with this indiscriminate management of electronic waste. So you can really see that it's not a line that we should bother towing as a country. Even in terms of the ways that they dismantle this, a lot of harm. People dismantling it and managing them in those indiscriminate manners expose themselves. There's been studies that have showed metal composition in the blood stream of people that manage e-waste in this indiscriminate manner. So you can readily tell that it's something that requires specialized arrangement as already planned.
Wow, thank you very much, Ibukun. I really love and appreciate how you could connect all of these. And this is part of, I would say, the highlights of having conversations like this, that we can connect things that seem so abstract with our everyday life. We can connect things that seems like academic work to the impact, on health, on lifestyle. And really, this is the most important way to get people to take action. So thank you for those insights. Moving on forward, you probably have, thoughts around some best practices. So if we really must get it right when it comes to e-waste management in Nigeria, Ibukun, tell us, what do you think are some best practices out there? How can we contextualize it and make it work here in Nigeria?
Okay, so best practices just keeps improving when it comes to e-waste. What you see today, the next day is you see something else, and there's no end to best practices when it comes to e-waste management. But one thing I know that is sacrosanct is put adequate information out there about e-waste hazard and let people know it has no place in the dustbin. It shouldn't end up in our landfills. Secondly, ensure that there's access for them to take this thing back. So there's collection access in a wide range of places. In supermarkets, in malls, municipal centers, just in every community, people should have access to take back their e-waste. And they should be provided with incentives for doing so. And then the recycling should be maintained at the formal level, well standardized. All recyclers need to be certified to existing certifications. In Nigeria, we already have a standard that SON has recently published and is up in the library for anybody to access. At the regional level, ITU is pioneering the development of another standard for e-waste management. And at the international level, there are standards. There's a standard for e-waste management currently also further being reviewed, and even for different components, there are standards for managing refrigerators, electronic waste, and what have you. So it's just ensuring that all of these are followed to the letter, because the knowledge is out there, and it's even at home with us. Even what we are calling best practices, we already know it. It's not as if we have how will I put it, positive existing knowledge. So it's just to put ourselves out there to really want to do what is required.
Great. And you talked about this international cooperation. I know that Nigeria also has ratified the Basel Convention that stipulates clearly that only operational electronic waste that are intended for reuse should be shipped internationally. But like I said, when I opened up, this conversation, we still have over 500 metric tons of e-waste that came into Nigeria in 2022. Nigeria is one of the top countries, that swallows all of the e-waste from different parts of the world. But you also talked about the role of education, and I would say podcasts like this, highly educational, platforms for people to learn. In addition, the SCALE program also has a digital waste course that people can take, learn, find some fact figures, and work their way around how they can be, better steward or sort of improve the e-waste management sector in Nigeria. So thank you so much, Ms. Ibukun Faluyi. I've been speaking with Ibukun Faluyi. She is a sustainability specialist, and she's worked across the environmental and resource management sector for over 20 years. She brings all of this experience to the conversation today as we talk about e-waste. More so, she is the executive secretary of the E-Waste Producer Responsibility Organization of Nigeria. And she's been in this role trying to lay the framework for having lasting solutions to the huge e-waste challenge that Nigeria faces today. She's walked us through, thoughts around or giving us an outlook of the e-waste situation in Nigeria, connected this to things we can relate with, health, economics, and that's very well appreciated. But now I want to come back to what you do at EPRON. You are the leading organization when it comes to e-waste management in Nigeria. If you look, left, right, it is EPRON that we see as, being at the forefront of managing e-waste in Nigeria. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and what are the successes you're seeing? What are the things that are exciting you about the organization today?
Okay, so EPRON was incorporated solely for implementing the Extended Producer Responsibility Program in the electrical electronic equipment sector in Nigeria, and also to ensure the environmentally sound management of electronic waste, using circular economy principles essentially. And what we're about is to ensure that producers remit their fees for managing e-waste according to their market share. So we provide a platform for them to make all those payments. After providing platform for them to make the payments, then the payment is supposed to be used for the collection and then the recycling of electronic waste. So what was responsible for providing access to collection, let people have places to take their e-waste to, and then also move this to the recyclers, and the recyclers get to recycle them in an environmentally sound manner. So most of these standards, it's our responsibility to ensure that these value chain players are domesticating them appropriately without polluting the environment in the discharge of their duties. And so far, it's been exciting trying to really put that framework in place, because the first thing you want to do when you want to get people to comply to a process is to make sure that there's a legal basis for making it happen. If there's a legal basis, the policies are in place, then it legitimizes what you're doing, and then you can provide a platform where everybody is equal. So we've been working very hard to give producers an opportunity to comply, developing some tools to help with that. And then we've also tried to set up collection centers across the 6 geopolitical zones. We had to just pilot the process in 7 states of the countries, you know, then we can then go further to scale up the process. Now, to make all of this work, we got support from IHS to develop like a national manual for collectors to work with. You can find the manual on our website. It's a very good tool for collectors and anybody that wants to have general knowledge of electronic waste. It's very fantastic tool. You can read, it tells you all the regulations, the standards, and what have you that you need to know about electronic waste in the country. And then it provides information on how you should handle them, what you shouldn't do with them, and all of that. So beyond developing that manual, we've also, you know, done a very good study that helps us to have like a background information as to how people relate with electrical and electronic equipment across its life cycle, not just when it becomes e-waste. And then it's a basis for us to say, okay, we are developing certain interventions in a way that can work. Earlier, you heard me talking about having retail centers as collection points, having informal people going around as collectors. So all of this came from the outcome of that study that was also funded by IHS that we did. And it, you know, it's generally feeding into the programs we are developing. And so this year, you're going to be seeing a lot of activities from EPRON that will also take the practice further and disseminate more information across the country.
Incredible. How incredible it is to see how that, you know, most of the work that you do are research-based. Not marketing anyone, just tell us, who are some of the top players when it comes to e-waste management in Nigeria? I know, for example, Inkling Recycling, but just walk us through. You work with them more closely. Who are some of the players on the scene when it comes to e-waste management in Nigeria?
Yeah, so if you're talking about e-waste management, you are talking about the downstream management now, that like the recyclers, right? We have people like Initiate, yes, exactly. We have Itera, we have Inkly. Those are the 3 recyclers that we have in the country. Itera Technologies, Inkly Recycling Associates, and the Initiate PLC.
Great, great. Thank you so much indeed. Yes, thank you so much indeed. So, just as we bring this conversation to a close, you said we're going to see quite a lot in the coming days when it comes to how e-waste is being managed and the conversations around it. Can you just, you know, throw open the curtain a little bit and tell us what are the things we should look forward to, particularly like you've hinted, that are research-based, that you think will really make a difference when it comes to e-waste management in Nigeria?
Okay, so for one, we anticipate that small producers will take the compliance more seriously and pay the full fees that is associated with managing the e-waste that they've generated. We also anticipate, we plan to go to our existing collectors and ensure that we certify them to meet the required standards, improve their collection practice in their facilities, expand collection to some newer states while consolidating on the states that we have already. And then the awareness also, you know, doing a lot more awareness as is required. It's possible also you get to see a challenge. We are looking at having a challenge for managing some aspects of with the UK Innovates of e-waste. So that's likely. You can see there are other projects. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag yet. So just stay tuned. Don't stop going to our website and following us on all our social media platforms. And then you can just...
Incredible. At least we can feel the fur of the cat, even if we cannot see the cat itself. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Ms. Ibukun Faluyi. We really appreciate this insight. We'll put the EPRON's website in the show notes so that people can check out the website, check out all the resources that you have on that portal. Thank you so much indeed for your time. Thanks for your insight. We're really glad that we could have this conversation with you today. Absolutely. Indeed, my pleasure. Thanks indeed. And that's where we call it a wrap on this episode of GreenBytes Wednesday. I want to say thank you for listening, for watching, for sticking through. I hope you've learned something. I have learned a lot from this conversation with Ibukun. And please, like I said, share with people in your network. The podcast is also available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and SoundCloud. You'll find GreenBytes Wednesdays there. And this podcast, like I said when we started, our aim is just to facilitate these critical conversations and steer the consciousness within you when it comes to the impact of digital footprint, when it comes to understanding Nigeria's technology ecosystem, when it comes to advancing knowledge, discovering the trends, the tools in the digital sustainability space. You can find all those answers on GreenBytes Wednesday. Feel free to check out the Scale for Net Zero program also on the website. Follow on all our social media communications channel. Interact with us, ask us questions, and we would really love to read from you. Thank you to the team, led by wonderful Ajibola and Ayo. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to bring you this episode. Thank you, and bye for now. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote, and it's been a pleasure hosting this conversation. Till the next time, continue to take action now, and remember that every little action counts. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of GreenBytes Wednesday. This podcast is brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, thanks to funding from the UK government through the Digital Access Program. Have you learned something new? Please share with your network, share with your friends, as I look forward to hosting you on yet another episode of GreenBytes Wednesday next week. Follow us on our social media platforms, check out our courses, test yourself, see how much you know, how much you're learning when it comes to digital and sustainability ecosystem in Nigeria. And I should remind you that as you balance your knowledge of digital ecosystem, also remember to stay committed to a shared and sustainable planet. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. Bye for now.